Thanks, Steve. Like I said this morning, I do feel I come home when I come here. And like I said this morning, what I always see here is reality. You know what I mean, don't you? That you are a people that want to be real with each other. You're not afraid to be real with each other. I can go to some churches, there's nobody coming up the front, but their hearts are aching to get out and respond to God. But they're just too afraid of each other. And here you're not. It's a safe place, and that's wonderful. And you are a people that wants to be real with God. So I know this morning I was direct with one or two people when I chatted and prayed, but I see that you're after God and you want to hear it. So bless you for that. A little phrase that was lingering a bit tonight in one of the early songs we sang. It wasn't a new song, it was that Praise is Rising. But I just feel it's for somebody here tonight to hear. And it's about Jesus healing broken lives. It's what he loves doing the most, isn't it? See. And so if you're feeling this, you're a bit broken up tonight, you're in the right place. Completely the right place. Because it's Jesus' favorite thing to do. So this morning we were thinking about perspective. I said it is a big posh word for a Sunday morning in Sedgley, but you wouldn't mention it in Gornal. I know John Rose here, he's a bit posh, but he's from the Straits, so originally, I think, isn't it? I don't know, John. He'll have me afterwards. But we were thinking this morning about how it's important, if we're following Jesus, to see things as they really are. It's what perspective's about. And sometimes we kind of lose the plot a bit because we're not seeing God as he really is. And we're not seeing me as I really am. Not seeing ourselves. And when that happens, we can go downhill quick, can't we? Hello? Now, this morning crowd, they were very good. They know that I get bored with talking on my own, and you get bored with me talking. So please interact. All right, you can talk back, and I'll have a suck of your lollipop later if you haven't finished with it. All right. Be at home, darling. Be at home, but keep me a lollipop if you've got one. Do you know a funny thing happened to me? You know, the comedians used to say a funny thing happened to me, didn't they, on the way to the whatever. Well, a funny thing happened to me between preparing for tonight and getting here tonight. Now, I still have to check this out, really do have to check this out, because the weirdest thing happened. I had notes prepared for tonight. I had not written them up. I'm sorry, I do use computers, but I like to write stuff out by hand as well. And my notes disappeared. Now, I've got the 2 notebooks that my notes were in, but I ain't got the notes. I have not a clue what happened to those notes. I'm very careful about stuff like that. So after an initial panic, I had to go to God and say, now, hang on a minute, has this got anything to do with you? Could this mean that actually the nice little word that I'd got on perspective for the evening meeting isn't the word you wanted to speak? It always brings you up a bit sharp if you're a speaker. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I've got 2 days, And I felt God saying, absolutely spot on, Maggie. He has to do drastic things because I'm a bit of a slow learner, So I said, okay, where are we going? I still believe we should be thinking about perspective again tonight, but instead of how do we see our circumstances and God and us, I felt him saying, I want you to talk about how I see you, how God sees you, how God sees us together as his church as well, here in this little bit of his kingdom. I wonder if you ever ask him that question, if you ever got the guts to ask him that question, God, how do you see me? Yeah? Oh, I've got a few blank faces. I'm worried now. Some of us sadly think that's a scary question to ask God, don't we? I have times I've been afraid to ask him, how do you see me? One day I had a real surprise. I said, God, how do you see me at the moment? I feel I'm I'm really messing up. I feel I'm a bit of a failure. I feel I haven't done much for you lately. I feel I'm plodding along here. I felt all sorts of things, you know. Because we go to the negative, don't we? Mostly. I said, how do you see me? Immediately, I saw a picture of a huge vase of gerberas. I don't know if you know what gerberas are. Some of the ladies will. But to me, they're one of the most gorgeous flowers God ever created. And these were purple. They weren't pale pink. They were purple. And if I could be a colour, I'd be purple. I'd want to be purple. And if I could be a flower, I'd want to be a gerbera. And I cried. God says, that's how I see you. Don't be afraid to ask him. You might have a surprise. But we do go to the negative. And this morning, like we were thinking, you know, that the enemy's, one of his favourite tactics is to come with lies. And another is to bring fears. And so we get into that mode of, I must be a disappointment to the Father. I haven't done enough. We know it's the gospel of grace, and we still keep going on about stuff we've got to do for him. And he says, hello, remember the cross? But Lord, you know, I'm not worth very much. And we come with all sorts of nonsense that, again, the enemy has spun us, and we see ourselves all wrongly. And we can lose the plot like that as well. Hello? Are you with me? So this perspective thing, you see, the two most important questions I have to keep right in my spirit are, who's he? We thought about that a bit this morning. And who am I? And we sang some great songs about that this morning as well. Because if I've got it in my little heart and spirit that I am a child of God, it changes everything. Yeah? Some of you have known that for years. Some of you, dear folks, are just discovering that for the first time. And it's a bit exciting. So tonight, I am going to speak on a funny verse. I spoke on a funny story this morning. And it wasn't the most, you know, it was a bit of a depressing story, but it was a wonderful story. But I am speaking tonight out of a book I very rarely read, never mind preach out of. But it is one of the most beautiful books in the Bible. And if I said I have some guesses what it is, some of you would guess very quickly. It is the most beautiful love story. Yeah, the clever ones have got it, you see. Most of us like a good love story, don't we? All right, chaps, I'm sorry, but I do. All right. And this is from the book of the Song of Solomon, or the Song of Songs. And basically, this book is a love story about Solomon, a gorgeous, it sounds like a gorgeous, handsome young guy, like some of you young guys tonight, who was going to be the king of Israel. And he met a beautiful Jewish girl who was working in his vineyards, and he fell for her. And they got married, and he wrote a very, very set of passionate songs, almost, really. And they're in the Bible. Now, why are they in the Bible? Because, you know, actually, they're a bit risque. These, you know, if you've never read this book, it's hot stuff, I tell you. And it's in the Bible. It would be Wednesday night drama on BBC One, I can tell you. Now, everybody's going to be looking. But you see, because Solomon, as a young man, he really had a heart for God, and he had a very sensitive spirit to God. I don't know if he knew it or not, but when he wrote that beautiful set of love songs to this beautiful woman, he was actually doing something much more than that. He was drawing a picture. He was sending a message from Jesus to us, because this is also a picture of how Jesus sees us as his followers, as the church. Yeah? So that's a good reason to read it. And tonight, we are just going to look at one verse, one fabulous verse from that bit. And if you've got your Bibles or your phones, or you want to plug in, switch on, whatever you do, it's just chapter 6, verse 10. Now, I'm sorry if you're not really into poetry. I'm not either, actually. But this is so fabulous. And when I read it in the Passion Translation, if you've not got the Passion Translation, get it. Especially for the Song of Solomon, it really makes a difference. The language is just fabulous. Very rich and wonderful. And chapter 6, verse 10 says this. Now, this is to you, okay? This is what Jesus is saying about how he sees you. You might want to close your eyes like some of you at the back are doing at the moment, so you can take it in. And he says to you, look at you now, arising as the dayspring of the dawn, beautiful as the shining moon, bright and brilliant as the sun in all its strength, astonishing to behold as a majestic army, waving banners of victory. Now, in case you blinked and missed it, I'm going to read it again. Because that's all we're going to look at tonight. That's all we're going to think about, because it's fab. Here we go. Jesus is saying to you, look at you now. Arising as the dayspring of the dawn, beautiful as the shining moon, bright and brilliant as the sun in all its strength, astonishing to behold as a majestic army, waving banners of victory. Is that great or what? Hello? And you thought you were just a pokey little church in Sedgley. Some of you. Or you thought you were just a frightened little follower of Jesus who doesn't say much to the people around you about him. Jesus says, you asked me how I see you tonight. That's a bit of it. That's only a bit of it. But it's a great bit of it, isn't it? Some of you don't look very excited. I shall continue because there's more. So I want to just pull 3 things out of here tonight. Never mind the poetry. Don't let that put you off. And the first thing that I'm going to pick out, I'm going to spend most of the time on, because that's the bit that underlies the rest, you see. And the first thing is this, that in this beautiful, beautiful little love song, I believe Jesus is saying to you tonight, I want you to know that you are beautiful. You are beautiful. Now, you may not feel very comfortable being told that you are beautiful, especially if you're a bloke. I'm sorry, chaps. But you see, this word is actually used in the Bible quite a bit where God is talking about us. Did you realize that? There's one picture that he keeps using all through the Bible. He says, you're like a bride. Now, I don't know if you've been to a wedding lately. I went to a wedding about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was wonderful. And Katie, this dear girl who was marrying my friend Josh, you know, she'd got a fabulous, fabulous white dress on. And she just looked perfection. No creases, no dirty marks. Just completely gorgeous. And that's one picture in Scripture that Jesus uses about you, about us together as his church. He says, you are beautiful. Now, some people say beauty's in the eye of the beholder, don't they? Yeah, you know. If you've got a newborn baby and you're a mom, well, your baby's the most beautiful baby in the whole world, yeah? If you're a guy in love, your girlfriend, your wife, is the most beautiful woman anybody's ever seen. Thank you, Ian. Thank you. And after 25 years of marriage, 40 years of marriage, yeah, he's still saying the same thing. Good for you, mate. Good for you. A gardener who's got his little plot that he's planted all on his very own. It's the most beautiful plot in the world, isn't it? Yeah. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So you say, beautiful me? I don't think so. Beautiful our church? I don't think so. Sorry. But what the Father describes us as in this little bit here is indisputable beauty. There's no arguing against it. For example, he says this. Now, this is poetry. Look at you, arising like the dayspring of the dawn. What's that all about? Ever been up before the sunrise? Not likely, you say. Not me, I'll tell you. I'm not a fan of early rising. Not these days, anyway. But some of you are. Some of you get up early to go to work, and some of you get up early because you like getting up early or you can't sleep. And if you have had the privilege of waking up before the sun and watching the day start, you know it's magical, isn't it? It is magical. Somebody's nodding at the back, yeah. Because the sun very slowly and then somehow quite suddenly just bursts out of the darkness and announces that it's day. There's nothing like it. It is glorious. So beautiful. Jesus says, you're like that. You are like that. Then he goes on a bit and he says, you're as beautiful as the moon. Beautiful as the moon. We've had a few different moons, haven't we, the last few years? We've had red moons. We had quite a bit of talking about the red moons, didn't we? Some people have written books on the red moons, and you might have read them. Very interesting. And we've had harvest moons. We've even had a blue moon, haven't we? Don't know if anybody saw that. Yeah? I haven't dreamt that, have I? They say once in a blue moon. No, really. I think some months ago there was supposed to be a blue moon. Nothing to do with cheese, they told me, but there was a blue moon. You must research it. When I lived in Hong Kong, for some of you that I don't know very well, I've lived in Hong Kong for years, and I've lived in mainland China for a few years as well. And I've had the privilege of living with some fabulous people. Most of them were coming out of lots of brokenness. The vast majority were coming out of addiction to drugs. And I have had some wonderful adventures with these people. And I've loved it. And I'm going back to Hong Kong this Tuesday to see lots of them. Lots of them have become like my sons over the years. And it's been a great privilege. And so sometimes, for a while when I lived out there, we lived in the foothills of a mountain range. And so at night, there was not much artificial light around. And the night skies would be just glorious. And so I would come off duty sometimes at 2:30. And I just used to love to stand and watch the night sky, you know. And sometimes we would have a moon, like you might call a harvest moon. And it would be just there, you know. And you'd think you could pick it out of the sky, like a golden grapefruit. Now, never mind talking about harvest moons, red moons, or whatever. On a clear night, just a regular moon is a glorious thing, isn't it? Jesus says, that's how I see you. Beautiful, beautiful. But you see, the interesting thing about the moon is, did you know this? The moon shines, of course, very brightly, doesn't it? Sometimes, if there's no cloud. The moon doesn't have any light of its own. Did you know that? You're much more clever than me. I'm discovering lots of things in my old age. But the moon just reflects the light of the sun. That's all. It's a bit of a lesson for us, isn't it? And the fantastic thing is, you see, that when we start to get around the Son of God I'm talking about now, I'm talking about Jesus. When we start to get around him, and his light starts getting all over us, we start being very shiny. Some of you are very shiny in here tonight. Do you realize that when you go out there, you're still shiny? And you may not realize it at all, but some of you are giving off lots and lots of light to people around you. And people are drawn to it. They are drawn to the light of the Son of God in your life. And that is wonderful. It reminded me, we've had the word quite a few times today, and this word rise has come up quite a bit. And I felt tonight we needed to rise up a bit, that there was a bit of heaviness in here, and that we need to be rising up. And I feel that's one thing God is calling us to do tonight, to rise up as his church. And it reminded me of that great verse in Isaiah chapter 60, verse 1, where Isaiah says to the people of God, arise and shine. Now, arise there means stand up straight. It means get up and stand up straight. And shine, because your light's already come. We haven't got to bring the light with us, folks. The light's already here. If you've got Jesus in you, you've already got your light. Hello? This is very exciting, isn't it? You know, it's very exciting. I talking about these guys that I have lived with over the years. You know, many of them were triads. Many of them have done the most awful things. 99%, or if not more, have been in prison, in and out of prison for years. Wonderful men. Absolutely wonderful, wonderful men. When they come to know Jesus, boy, is it great. And so one morning, not very long ago, I was in mainland China. I was with a bunch of these wonderful chaps, and we were sitting around. And I said to them, I said, you know, what differences have you noticed in yourself and in each other as you have allowed God to touch you with his love? And one little chap who I love to bits, you shouldn't have favourites, I know, but Gardong was one of my favourites, and he'd been in and out of prison for 20 years. Couldn't read much, hadn't had much education at all, but absolutely loves the Bible. He knows stuff in the Bible that I've never heard of before. Amazing the stuff he picked up, really loves Jesus. He pipes up very quickly and very seriously. Remember I said, what difference can you see as you've received more of Dad's love? And he said, some of us are getting better looking. I wasn't what I was expecting. Anyway, do you know what happened? We started looking around. There's a bit of a chuckle, you know, just like you. And people agreed it was true. It was right. It was actually right. And then names started getting mentioned. And especially they very kindly, they did it very graciously. They pointed out one dear guy called Chun San. And Chun San, when he came to live with us a couple of years before, he didn't even look like a person. He had no expression on his face. There was a deadness about him. His parents had been killed in a car accident when he was a young teenager, and he had behaved like an orphan ever since. He got an orphan spirit. And he looked dead, and he had taken heroin for years and years. Over 20 years. He looked different now. And the guys realised. And from that moment on, his nickname was 007, and he still answers to it to this day. And I tell you, Pierce Brosnan couldn't hold a candle to him. In looks, I'm talking about. Really? He's a handsome man now. Different. Because the light of Jesus was shining off him. And the guys realized as we talk like that what it was. Folks, that's what we're meant to be. That's what the church is meant to be. That's what he's doing in you. Beautiful. When I was in Leicester, I came back to Leicester for a few years, and I ran a group for teenage moms. And we would talk about all sorts of things like, what does it mean to be loved? What does it mean to be beautiful? And one morning, one of my team told this story. It's actually a true story. And it's about a girl who lived in the South Pacific on an island. And this girl was supposed to be quite plain and unattractive. And her parents feared that they would not be able to marry her off to anybody. Now, in that part of the world at that time, people would buy a bride. They would pay a bride price, you know, like a dowry. And because the precious commodity on those islands was cattle, you would buy a wife with cows. It's a nice thought, isn't it, ladies? So, you know, a decent, attractive woman might fetch 5 or 6 cows. A middle to average one might fetch 3 or 4. But this is true, I kid you not. I kid you not. But this dear girl, it was thought that, you know, they'd have a job getting 1 cow for her. It has a happy ending. Bear with me, okay? So one day, this guy, this businessman, comes into town. His name is Johnny Lingo. I thought they were kidding me for a while, but it's true. He rides into town, and I think it possibly was. I don't know. It's a South Pacific island. Who knows? But anyway, he offers 10 cows for the girl. Now everybody's gobsmacked, not least her parents, of course, who are over the moon. Made it rich. And he marries her, and he takes her off to another island where he lives. Now, sometime later, an American writer who heard this story was intrigued and thought, I want to find out what a 10-cow woman looks like. Chaps who wouldn't, And so he goes and he finds out this couple and he interviews them. And I read the article that he wrote. That's how I know it's true. Found it online. And he writes, she was the most beautiful woman I have ever seen. What happened to that plain, unattractive, dear lady that they thought wasn't going to be worth even one cow? Well, I think it's quite simple, really, don't you? I think it's the same thing that's happening to my guys in China. It's the same thing that's happening to some of you tonight who look a bit shiny. It's the same thing that should be happening to all of us when we start to realize what it's like to be really loved. Do you know that a woman becomes more beautiful when she knows she's really loved by a man? Husbands, blokes, boyfriends, if you want your wife to become more beautiful, the good news is you probably don't need to pay for her to have a makeover. But what you do need to do is you need to love her like anything, and you need to let it show. That is scripture, You read Ephesians 5, that's a version of Ephesians 5. Can't contest that. Jesus gives you some good advice. He says, when you love your wives like Jesus loved the church, you've got it. It's in the bag. And the wives will enjoy it so much, and she'll become more beautiful. When we start to really realize, folks, and you may have been coming to church for years, it may be your very first time tonight, it doesn't matter, but when we start to realize that God the Father and his Son Jesus gave much, 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 much more than 10 cows to have you for himself, we start to change. Something happens. Broken we may have been, we become beautiful. My guys were heroin addicts and triads, and some of them were murderers for years. They are beautiful, I tell you. They're treasures, and they know it. Because the love of the Father has done something wonderful for them. You feel broken tonight, you don't feel worth very much. You open yourself up to the love of the Father, and stuff will start happening. He says, you're beautiful. And you're worthy, so worthy of my love that I gave much, much more than 10 cows. He also says, second thing, you are bright and brilliant. Brilliant as the sun in all its strength. Now, I don't know what picture this conjures up for you. We read in the Bible about how the church and how Christians, as followers of Jesus, we should be like lights, don't we? I used to picture myself as a tiny little candle, in a great big dark room. Not making a lot of impact, really. I wonder if that's how you see yourself. Because it can be a bit dark out there, can't it? It is. Our society, our community, our world is a pretty dark place. So you may see yourself like that. You may see this church like this in Sedgley. It's just a little tiny, perhaps a little fat candle, not a tiny sort of single candle. Ever been to one of those concerts, where they get you to turn your torch on your smartphone and sort of go like that a bit with it, and everybody goes like that, and it looks quite pretty, doesn't it? Makes a bit of an impact on the darkness, but not too much. I wonder if you see us like that together. If you do, you're missing the point. Completely missing the point. Jesus said in Matthew, if you are like a light, you don't want a light under a table. You want it to be like a city on a hill. Now, a city on a hill is very noticeable, isn't it? Hello, I'm still here. And ever been to Italy? Italy is absolutely riddled with these cities on hills, and they're gorgeous. You're driving around through fields of sunflowers, and then you go, woo, 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 because they're all around. They're gorgeous, brightly lit cities. Now we're getting closer. But we're not there yet, because here he says, do you know what you're like? Individually, when you go out to work and school and the supermarket, and together as this church in Sedgley, you are as bright and brilliant as the sun. Now, we've had some sunny days in the summer, over the summer, haven't we? 34 degrees, that's pretty good for the UK, isn't it? Didn't need to go to Mallorca this time. Not a cloud in the sky, and you just want to get away from the sun sometimes because it is so powerful and it gets everywhere. That's it. We're getting closer now to the picture. The light, the brilliance that you carry individually and especially together as the people of God in this place, Jesus says, is like that. And you may not think you're doing much. You can push back the darkness in Sedgley. You can push back the darkness in this community if you just be who he's called you to be. If you just go where he's called you to go. If you just stick together as he's called you to. You say, how does this work, Maggie? How can we do this? How can we be like this? This is a bit over the top, isn't it, really, for a Sunday night? This is a bit much to ask of us. I'm not really into physics very much. I know very little about physics, and if there are any sciencey people here tonight, I could get knocked down in flames very quick. But I do know this, that the way the sun works is something to do with a nuclear reaction called fusion. Am I right so far? Thank you. That lots and lots of hydrogen atoms combine together and they form something called helium. You know helium you blow the balloons up with. And helium gives up loads and loads of light and heat. That's simplified it no end, doesn't it? It's about fusion. Guess what? How do we stay bright and brilliant for him? Fusion, same thing. Jesus says in John 15, church, without me, you can't do a toss. You can do nothing. But stay close to me. Depend on me for everything. Come to the prayer meeting and be crying out to me and depend on me and listen to my heart and listen to my head as well, because I'm going to give you the strategies to do it. Rely on me as the head. Be drenched by me. Walk in step with me. Just as close as you can. That fusion, that coming together. And boy, the brilliance is going to hit your community like nobody's business. Beautiful, bright, brilliant. It's good stuff, isn't it? Hello, I can see some heads coming up now, you see. This morning when I prayed for one or two people, I noticed that some of your shoulders hung very low. I don't believe it's because you've got arthritis in your shoulders or anything. I believe some of you are not seeing yourself as he sees you today. But tonight, I hope that's going to change. He is the glory and the lifter of your heads. He calls us to rise up, stand up straight and shine. It's not because of anything we have got, or it's him. It's what he's going to do. One lady said to me this morning, I can't break the power of this lie. I said, why? And then when she told me, I said, now what's that? She said, I'm looking at the problem and not him, aren't I? I said, absolutely. Spot on. Spot on. And if you look at yourself and tell yourself what you can't do, if you as a church look at yourselves and tell yourselves what you can't do, you're missing it. But perspective is about looking at him first, and he'll tell you what you can and can't do. This is what he says you can do. You can be brilliant in Sedgley and beyond and shine for him, and the darkness will get pushed back. Right, I've nearly done. I promised to be finished by 8. You laugh. You haven't heard me before. The last thing is a reminder not only of how God sees us, but how the enemy sees us. And this is good stuff. Because mostly we think the enemy sees us as wimps and easy to kick around. Don't we? Not you. Good mates. Jay, I'm so glad you came. But I hear people talking like this. Oh, be careful. You're getting baptized tomorrow. Oh, be careful. The enemy will be after you. I heard a leader saying the other night, well, we've put our head above the parapet. Now we can expect an attack. And I'm like, hello, excuse me. That happens, sure. But when you put your head above the parapet, whose territory are you putting yourselves into? You're not just putting yourselves into the enemy's territory. You're putting yourself into God's territory where he's told you to go. So don't see it like that. Don't expect him. Don't keep welcoming him. Because that's what we're doing sometimes. We're giving him too much airtime. The last bit he says, this is how I see you. Astonishing to behold. Like a majestic army, waving banners of victory. Now that's pretty great, but I found a better translation of that I like even better. Can't remember where it comes from. It might just be the NIV actually. But it says, you are as terrible as an army with banners. Isn't that great? This is you guys. This is you. Terrible as an army with banners. That, we're talking there, fantastic spectacle. Seen Lord of the Rings? Yeah, it's been on telly again for about the 75th time. But it's wonderful stuff. I think it is anyway. I think it's just, that guy who wrote Tolkien, he was a Christian. And he wrote gave some wonderful illustrations of what the battle of the enemy's kingdom and the Father's kingdom is like. And if you've seen Lord of the Rings, the last one, Return of the King, is it the number 3? Or if you've seen The Hobbit, it's especially in The Hobbit, the third one with the 5 armies. You see in those final scenes all those armies together, armed to the teeth, looking magnificent, but absolutely terrifying, aren't they? This is what he's talking about. He says, you are astonishing because you are magnificent, but you are very scary. Hello, he's talking about you. He's talking about us as the church. The word really here means you are to be dreaded. That's how the enemy says you are to be dreaded. Can you believe it? That's what the church is. The banners are significant, They're carrying banners, many banners. And a banner would have been carried when you went out to war. And a banner would show where each fighting unit was. And a banner would show where the leader of that unit was. And so the leader needed to hold the banner up because it was a sort of rallying point. And when it got chaotic in the battle, you'd know where you'd got to regroup and go back to your leader. Like a standard, standard bearer. But also, the banner means if there's a banner here, and a banner here, and a banner here, many, many banners means many, many fighting units. So terrible as an army with banners takes on a new meaning. The more banners you've got, the more fighters you've got. Man, you better be scared if there's a lot of banners. What is the banner we're carrying? What's the banner that you're carrying when you go out on your own? Because you're a fighting unit on your own. Did you know that? But when we come together, we're a more powerful fighting unit. The church worldwide is made up of millions of fighting units. You're just one of them here in Sedgley. And you're carrying banners. And the banner is the most wonderful and yet the most terrible demonstration of the Father's love. It could be. The banner, of course, is the cross, isn't it? In here, in the book of Solomon, Song of Solomon, this lovely young girl says, he took me into his banqueting house, took me to his banqueting table, and his banner over me was love. The cross is the most wonderful and the most terrifying demonstration of that love that Jesus could raise up over us. And he raises it up over us as the church, and we must carry it as the church because it is the only thing that's going to deal with that darkness out there, isn't it? It's the cross that gives hope. It's the cross that gives forgiveness. It's the cross that gives freedom. It's the cross that brings light to the darkness. It's the cross that heals broken lives. And we are an army, terrible with banners. Doesn't that excite you a bit? Doesn't it make you want to wriggle in your seat and go, yes! How do I see you tonight? Jesus says, I see you as worthy of my love. I see you as so beautiful. I see you as brilliant, bright as the sun, kicking out darkness. I see you as an army with so much potential. Oh, Jesus, make us rise up like that. Eh? Yeah. Yeah. We're going to pray now. Let's just pray. And perhaps the band want to come out and we're going to sing in a minute. And for some of you tonight, the response is just, thank you, Jesus. Okay, I'm there. I'm in it. That's what I want to be. That's how we want to be. That's how you might want to respond tonight. I think there's... some of you may want to respond to stuff as individuals because when I said, you know, you're beautiful and you're worthy of love, there's one or two people in here tonight who are not very convinced of that yet. And you may not even know Jesus yet. And so when I said about opening yourself to the love of the Father, perhaps you've never done that. Tonight's the night, folks. Don't wait. Don't wait. However you have seen yourself, maybe it's like some of my guys saw themselves as rubbish. They used to say that about themselves. We're rubbish people, and others have called us rubbish people. Whatever people have labelled you with in the past, and whatever you have labelled yourself with, that is not from the Father. It's not from Jesus. And tonight he wants to peel some of those labels off for some of you and say you are beloved and you are beautiful and you are worthy and you are mine. So if that's you tonight, why don't you come out and receive that and just let him love you. There's somebody here tonight, I believe, carrying quite a bit of shame. And only you know what that's about. But it's like an old coat that you're wearing, and it's time to take it off and make an exchange. And if that's you, please come out and get some prayer. And there is somebody who is, the only way I can explain it, the phrase I kept getting was, you're trading on just a little credit. You think that the Father has got a little bit of something for you. And you're making do with that. And he says, I got much more than that. My bank is very big. We're not talking money. We are talking his love and all that he wants to pour into your life. And you're just getting by with a little bit of it. And he says, much, much more. Please, please come and respond to that. So, Holy Spirit, we just welcome you to dance on those words tonight, to speak into our spirits what you want us to hear. We thank you, Jesus, that all of this is only possible because of your cross and your love for us and the love of the Father for us. But thank you that we're not rubbish. We're not hopeless. We're not unworthy. We're not broken. We're not sinners. We have been, but you call us saints when we come to you. That we can be clean. We can be without shame. We can be free. We can be whole. We can be beautiful. We can be brilliant and shining. We can stand out in the darkness. We can be world shakers. We can shake this community with the light that you've put on us and in us and through us. And in our hearts, we want that, Jesus. So we give you permission now just to come and settle on us and touch us. Let your love come on us, Lord. We just open ourselves up, Jesus, to your embrace. Come and change us and cause us to rise up. Be who you made us to be, individually and together. Bless you, Lord. Praise you, Lord. Praise you.